Hey, what's up, comic book collectors? It's Christopher, aka the Bronze Age Nerd. Welcome to the Bronze Cave. Today I want to talk to you about something that really has been irritating me the last couple years about Free Comic Book Day. I know what you're thinking. What's there to hate about Free Comic Book Day? And it's not really about the event itself. It's about how we as collectors treat Free Comic Book Day and about how some retailers treat Free Comic Book Day. So we'll take a look at my thoughts. But first, before we get to today's video, I want to thank the sponsor, Comic Barricade. Comic barricades are a fantastic solution to a problem I bet you've had before. Have you ever had your comic books lean or fall over inside a comic book box that wasn't completely full? Well, if that's the case, if you want to prevent those bends, creases, and spine ticks, I recommend checking out Comic Barricades. Comic barricades create a wall inside your comic book box, and not only does that add rigidity and support to your stack of comic book boxes, it also prevents your comic books from falling over or flopping over. Stop the lean in your comic book boxes. Now, this design is patented, made here in the United States, and it ships for free. It's also available in two different sizes. You can get the regular size for most comic book boxes, or you can get the XL, which is great for those magazine boxes, a graded comic book box, things like that. Best of all, if you want to try out Comic Barricades, you can head over to comicbarricade.com and use the code BRONZE10 at checkout to save 10%. Remember, with Comic Barricades, it's as easy as insert, support, and stabilize. So Free Comic Book Day 2022 just happened. A lot of great comic books came out, and actually a ton of comic books came out. This was a very big Free Comic Book Day from the catalog that was offered. And here's my problem with Free Comic Book Day. From the collector side, the last couple of years, I've seen a real problem with people having a less than grateful attitude for what Free Comic Book Day is. So, I mean, never forget what Free Comic Book Day is. A lot of it is for kids. A lot of it is for young collectors. It's not only for young collectors. I'm not trying to say that's the case, but it's for primarily children and to get people involved in the comic collecting hobby. And one of the most silly things I've ever seen or heard about comic book collecting is this notion that we should try to make it an elitist club. And people don't really come out and say that, but there's a lot of stuff people say that is geared towards making it like, well, if you haven't been comic book collecting for 30 years, you don't deserve to be comic book collecting. That is silly. We need every comic book collector we can involved in this hobby. I don't care if you're in it for just the love of the comic books. I don't care if you just love the stories. I don't care if you just want to make some money on flipping books. I don't care what your reason is for getting into comic books. The more people we have in the hobby, the better it is. The more people buying comic books, the more companies will invest in their comic books, the more they'll hire good talent, the more stories we'll get, the more quality books we'll get, the more print run we'll get. All those things matter. The more it keeps local comic book shops in business, the more it keeps online comic book shops in business. All that stuff matters. Now, I don't want to say it's everybody that goes after these free comic books like greedy. That's not the case. What I've really noticed, though, as comic book collecting has sort of been experiencing this boom, I've noticed that there's people that are complaining about how many copies they can get. Like, oh, I go to, 3 LCSs and I get 2 from one, 4 from another, and only 10 from another, or whatever. You can make up the numbers. You guys most likely went to Free Comic Book Day if you're watching this. So tell me how many you got down below in the comments. But what you don't realize, or what a lot of you don't realize, is that this is Free Comic Book Day for you. These are paid for by the stores. It's not free to them. They spend a lot of money investing in these books to, for a lot of reasons, right? Or maybe for multiple reasons, to drive in new customers, to get new collectors coming to their store, to give you a reason to come in and hopefully buy some other stuff. A lot of different reasons, right? And I think those reasons are totally fine. That's kind of part of it's a support your local business, support your comic book shop kind of a thing, right? And no, these don't cost like full cover price of a normal comic book. In fact, in some cases, they might only cost, I think 25 cents is a number I hear a lot from retailers, but that's not all in. They also usually have to pay for shipping. There's a lot of other costs associated with that too. They also have to pay taxes, right? So it ends up being closer, from what I understand, at least from one retailer I spoke with, closer to 50 cents a book. And that particular person ordered thousands of books. So that adds up. Yes, of course, it's way cheaper than a regular comic book order, but they're also not necessarily getting anything back from this. So if you walk into a comic book store and you pick up, Avengers versus X-Men for Blade's daughter was the big book, right, that people were speccing on. People are wanting 10 or 20 copies of that book when they go into a comic shop for Free Comic Book Day. That's ridiculous. Okay, that's not going to happen. Limit 4. Oh, geez. Guys, these are free comic books to you. The retailers are paying for them. Have some respect for the retailer. And if you're going in and you're trying to get comic books for a kid or something like that in your neighborhood, say that. Try talking about like, hey, maybe it doesn't have to be this one, but I was hoping to get an extra copy for somebody in my neighborhood that couldn't make it today. That kind of thing. I mean, if that's really the reason, that's something you could say. Another thing I see complained about a lot is whether or not there's a stamp on the box. Guys, again, they're paying for the books. They want to, advertise in some cases their books. Now, would I prefer that they don't put a stamp on it? Sure. I'm glad that these ones didn't have stamps on them because then they're just pristine, right? But would a stamp on it affect me that much? No, it wouldn't. I get it. I think most comic shops probably don't want to put a stamp on it. Maybe a good strategy for the comic book shops is to stamp as they purchase, like say, hey, would you mind if we stamp this? And if the person says no, they stamp it. If the person says yes, they don't stamp it. That would be a way to get around that maybe. But I think that's a really minor gripe, but I'm tired of seeing it. I'm tired of the frustration people have about free comic book day. Strategies that work, partner up with somebody who has a comic shop that's more liberal online. There's lots of great groups. My Discord group is a great place where you could go and talk about free comic book day when it's coming up. There's hundreds of places online you can go. Facebook discussion groups, Discords, YouTube channels, all kinds of places, Reddit communities where you could talk about swapping free comic book day comics if you're really interested in kind of getting ones. There's also plenty of online stores that allow you to get free comic book days. Like if you did an order from Things from Another World or pre-orders with them, you could add books to your cart. They allowed one per customer, and you could get those. And that's another way that you could get a free comic book day comic. So another thing, and this is kind of more of a philosophical thing, just stop freaking out about free comic book day. First of all, there are some comics. There's a handful of comics for free comic book day that end up becoming worth a lot of money. Most of those comic books are much older. And I don't think in 2022, 2023 going forward, you're going to see a huge run on free comic book day comics because people are all over it. People are all over it when it comes out. So if there's some kind of new character like the Avengers versus X-Men, or people are like, oh, there's some spec behind that. Well, there's also like a 1 in 1,000 is probably going to be the comic book that is becoming worth money because they knew that there was going to be a ton of people interested in that book. So there's going to be a lot of those 1 in 1,000s out there as well, which means the A covers are essentially worthless. So stop freaking out about them would be my advice personally. If you want a copy to read it, I totally get it. But if you're wanting 10 copies or 5 copies, maybe calm down. Now, that said, did I get a bunch of copies of that book? Yeah, I did. I got a bunch of copies of that book. I pre-ordered them well ahead of time. I reached out. I paid a reasonable price to get them from somebody. I had an arrangement, and they didn't take away from anybody's supply of comic books. That person, that retailer, ordered a bunch of extra copies specifically for that purpose months in advance. So there are ways to get those hot spec books. Network with people, try to plan ahead, and you can get those books. I'm just in mentioning that as full disclosure. You'll see me have some of those books available. I kind of regret it because I don't think they're really going to be worth much. So I'm glad I'll probably have 1 or 2 nice copies out of it, and I'll probably give away the rest of them, to be completely honest with you. No, I didn't pay very much for them, so it's kind of one of those things. But still, I don't think it's going to end up being like $1,000 book. I don't think it's going to be a $100 book. Most free comic book days aren't because they were free to the consumers. Now, again, sometimes they are rare. So, One Punch Man is a good example. There's a couple Star Wars books that kind of have fetched a lot, but even some of the nice ones are worth like $5, $10, $15, and that's not a great investment to hold on to it for a few years, in my opinion. They do appreciate a little bit in some cases, but a lot of them, what are the odds that Primos 104 here? I don't know anything about this book. I haven't read this one yet. What are the odds that this ends up becoming like an expensive book? Pretty rare, pretty slim. I wouldn't freak out over most of these. Okay, retailers, you're not off the hook here, because retailers charging for free comic book day comics, man, I get it. Again, by the same token, they are something you have to pay for. But if you're ordering comics for free comic book day, look, if you order some to hold to the side and kind of sit on for a while and sell later, my personal opinion is that's fine. But there should be free comic books on Free Comic Book Day if you're participating. If you're choosing not to participate, hey, you do you. But I would really recommend not charging for Free Comic Book Days. You might make a little bit out of it, I guess, but I think you're going to lose a lot of ground with your customers, which in the long run is worth a whole lot more. Okay, those are my thoughts on Free Comic Book Day. I'm sure I'm going to have some comments below about my thoughts on Free Comic Book Day, but I want to know about your thoughts on Free Comic Book Day. So let me know what you're thinking as well. I'm curious what your take is on this topic. And some of you might say that like you don't see people complaining about this. Maybe I'm just in a lot of places where people discuss comic book stuff like this. Maybe I'm overexposed to that kind of thing because I try to have my finger on the pulse of what people are thinking about comic books. So keep that in mind. There might be a little bit of bias for how much I hear about this stuff, but I saw a lot of comments about it this year. I want you to remember that you can follow me over on Instagram, and you can go join my Discord where you can have conversations about Free Comic Book Day and other things as well. Plus, in the description, there's lots of ways you can save money on things like Comic Barricade, where you can save 10%, comic books over at Dangerous Waters Comics and More, who was nice enough to hook me up with some free comic books that I'm going to be giving away over my Whatnot sales and all that kind of stuff for Free Comic Book Day. Also, you can save money at cleaning and pressing your comics over at Turlock Comics. That's something you should check out as well. Don't forget, you can become a channel member through my YouTube channel or over on Ko-fi or Ko-fi, however you want to pronounce it. And that's a way to support me as well. And you actually get a chance to win free comic books every month by doing that. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you're having a fantastic day. And I want you to remember, as always, hey, 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 hey. Read comics every day.